And then you got Facebook. I mean, I've been down this track and other platforms. They then started to censor the New York Post revelations about the laptop, brilliantly related by our own Miranda Devine. And the FBI opted not to tell. The FBI opted not to tell the various social media companies that the laptop's contents were real. The FBI, what do you make of that?
You missed a gloss on it. It's true that Facebook censored, but we now know they censored because they were contacted by the Biden administration. So it would be a breach of the First Amendment if the Biden administration tried to censor anyone. So instead, they went to the social media bigwigs and got them to censor. And it now looks like some of the pressure also came from the sort of legacy media, like the New York Times, certainly on the lockdown stuff. And so you've got social media, which is a little bit better these days, solely because Elon Musk bought Twitter. And he has sort of opened up a space where you won't be canceled. But Zuckerberg and Facebook have been shocking, Meta. And you're right. And it now looks like the government goes to the social media and asks them to deplatform, censor. The idea that we in Australia would want to have a disinformation ministry of truth that the Albanese government's talking, it's very frightening stuff, Allan.
Well, yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'd like to hear the Liberals say
the biggest agent of disinformation is the government, isn't it? I mean, here is the FBI in America, and you've written this. James Allan has written this. The FBI was part of the biggest and most successful disinformation campaign since the Second World War, while ironically operating under the cover of claiming others were running a disinformation campaign. Now, the key point here, James, surely is simple. There's plenty of poll data showing that if the US voters had known about the laptop's contents, Trump would have won.
Sure seems like it. It sure seems like it. And, it's not just on this Hunter Biden thing. One of the top epidemiologists in the world, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford, who was one of the co-authors of the Barrington Declaration, he said through the 2.5 years of the pandemic, the biggest source of disinformation, and this is in the Democratic world, was government. They got everything wrong. They were censoring people. They were wrong about masks. They were wrong about whether the vaccine would stop the spread. It would stop you from getting it. In the U.S., Fauci was clearly up to his ears in trying to block the lab leak theory, which, is overwhelmingly now considered to be true. So why you would trust government to be this source of disinformation protection is nuts. It's just crazy.
You pulled all this together by saying that if you look at this Ukraine company, this Burisma outfit, Hunter Biden's payments, Devon Archer's evidence now that the father was involved in calls to the Ukrainian interests and so on. And you're saying, put all this stuff together, Hunter Biden giving access to the big guy, and you said this makes Watergate involving President Nixon, for those who, that was 1972, 5 men arrested for breaking into the Democratic Party's offices. You say this makes Watergate just look like a parking infringement.
Yeah, well, remember, they have clips of Joe Biden back when he was vice president bragging about having gone to the Ukraine and got that special prosecutor who was looking at Burisma, getting him fired. And at the time, Republicans say, well, why did you get him fired? And, it was to help clean out, the corruption. But now it looks pretty clear that the money that was pouring into the Biden family, well, a lot of it was from Burisma. And Allan, aside from a few top people in the ABC, who gets paid millions of dollars to do nothing? I mean, this is Biden. Hunter Biden was getting paid millions to sit on the board of Burisma. He didn't speak Ukrainian. He doesn't know anything about oil and gas. We now know that he got his dad on the phone 25 times. It's just pay for access. It's pay for access. And if it were a Republican, the mainstream media would be going crazy.
Absolutely.
They will do anything. They literally will do anything to help the Democrats because they're so afraid that Trump will win in 2024.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm talking to you about it. This is serious stuff. This is the leader of the free world. It is the free world. I mean, the polls show, you've made this point too, James, 50% of Democratic voters to this day believe the lie peddled by the Biden campaign and those 51 intelligence officers. The Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. I mean, how do you get out of it?
Well, that's because they just read the New York Times and listen to NPR. I'm willing to bet that people in Australia who get all their sources of information from the ABC
Yep.
would have no clue about this either. They just wouldn't know.
That's it. You said when you say to the ABC, this is James Allan said, when you say to the ABC and Fairfax viewers that the FBI from before the 2020 election was clearly complicit in allowing the Democrats to cover corruption, they think you're from Mars. I mean, but the FBI have been sitting on the Hunter Biden laptop for over 2 years. They knew from the start that it was a real laptop, but the Biden campaign orchestrated, you've said, 51 high-level former intelligence officers who just before the last election happened to pen a letter saying the laptop had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. James, they were all lying.
Now it looks pretty clear they were lying. I mean, some of them might have got roped in at the last minute and didn't know, but a good number of them clearly knew what they were saying was, at the very least, prevarication and dissimulation. You notice they were very careful with their wording. They said it had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. They were preemptively covering their rear ends when, should it ever come out, which they never thought it would. But should it ever come out, they could say, well, we were just pointing the fact that it could have been Russian disinformation, but they knew it wasn't. They had the laptop. They'd run all the checks. They knew it wasn't.
Just wrap this up. Now, every week we read of new charges against Donald Trump. Where is this going to end? The aim of the exercise, of course, is to disqualify his candidature. Where, from your reading of this, do you think this is going to end?
Well, two things. There is a school of thought amongst quite a few conservatives that the Democrats are actually wanting to make sure Trump gets the nomination because they think he's the best chance they have of winning. And so every time they bring another indictment, and they're all pretty bogus indictments, let me tell you the latest ones, effectively they're trying to criminalize your legal advice. So you get advice from your lawyers that there's a way to try to contest the election by asking the vice president not to count the Electoral College votes. And by the way, in 2022, the Democrats changed this statute that goes back to 1789. If it was so clear that Trump couldn't try what he was doing, why did they change the statute? There's no answer to that. But at any rate, I think this last indictment is just woefully laughable. And so does Alan Dershowitz, by the way, who's a Democrat. So does Professor John Turley. He's a Democrat. They're just saying they are weaponizing the criminal justice system against the main opposition figure they're going to face at the next election. And then they have the nerve to comment that in Russia, Putin has criminalized the opposition leader. I mean, you're just in no place to do that if you're doing the same thing. There are many, many Democrats you can go and look it up anywhere, who have contested past elections. Hillary Clinton did it. Al Gore did it. There's just a whole litany of Democrats who have said, I don't think that election was fair. I don't know what basis they think they're going to convict Trump, other than the fact that they're trying to bring the prosecutions in Washington, D.C., where no Republican's going to be acquitted when the jury pool is 94% Democrats. So that's why they're trying to get the charges brought in Washington, D.C. It's hard to fix that if you're a Republican.